If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 10 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis due to a bird strike into Busch Stadium. In the area code 314, it will be a burning bush, as described in Exodus 3:14, on November 27, 2024. She will be replaced by Michelle Obama, and then Barack Obama will replace Michelle. I am predicting that former President Jimmy Carter will die on November 4th, and that his prophetic funeral, in which Trump will sit next to Obama, will be on November 8th. It is predicted that President Trump will die from a heart attack on January 1st, 2025. It is also predicted that Trump's heart attack will be triggered by a directed energy weapon that will target Trump through Bluetooth technology. The components inside the pointy thing that Trump took will facilitate this, and it is believed that when Barack Obama is sitting next to Trump at Jimmy Carter's funeral, Obama will obtain Trump's Bluetooth MAC address, which will be used to target Trump with a directed energy weapon. I am predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation on December 16th. I am predicting that Israel will bomb Iran on December 17th. Israel will nuke and completely destroy Damascus, Syria on December 26th, 2024. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on November 8th, 2024. It is predicted that after Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash, Joe Biden will appoint Michelle Obama as his vice president. On December 17th, the Democrat Party will use their electoral votes to make Michelle Obama the president-elect. It is predicted that on either December 22nd or 25th, Joe Biden will suffer a stroke. It is predicted that on December 26, 2024, Joe Biden will step down and Vice President Michelle Obama will become the 47th president. It is predicted that on December 26th, Michelle Obama will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. On January 12, 2025, Michelle Obama will step down and Barack Obama will become the 48th president. His public inauguration ceremony will be on January 20th, 2025. It is predicted that on April 20th, 2025, there will be an outbreak of monkeypox or Marburg disease or both. April 20th will be a symbolic beginning to a new pandemic. June 8th, 2025, the true Feast of Pentecost in the calendar that watches for new moons, will be the day of the resurrection rapture event. It is predicted that on June 9th, the day after the rapture, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens, and it is possible that June 9th will be the day Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. It is predicted that on August 6th, 2025, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. I am predicting that a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun and send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 13th, 2025. Which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. The hit of the coronal mass ejection, predicted for August 13th, that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. I am predicting that on August 23rd, 2025, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth, which will trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be on the Day of Atonement, October 1st, 2025. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. All right, so far I have explained to you the trail of signs that is leading or led to September 26th, 2024, regarding the predicted death of former President Jimmy Carter, the 39th president, which is now predicted to be on November 4th, 2024. There is a lot to say as to why this is known ahead of time, but one of the first clues that this would be the case would naturally come from this September 26th date because of all of the trail of signs that had led to September 26th, as I have explained. Okay, now the death of the 39th president will be 39 days after September 26th. And this September 26th date was also the 309th. Sorry, this is a typo. November 4th is the 309th day of the calendar year. So from this step in the trail, September 26th, it is 39 days to the death of the predicted death of the 39th president on the 309th day of the calendar year. On this day, this was the day that Hurricane Helene hit the U.S. in the 3 times 9th state. Florida is the 27th state. 27 is 3 times 9. As has been explained, in God's big picture of signs, which is only being explained on this channel, his interconnected big picture of prophetic signs, Jimmy Carter is symbolism for Methuselah, who was the grandfather of Noah, as in Noah from Noah's flood. And Hurricane Helene is Noah's flood symbolism. What I am going to do here with this diagram in this video, this diagram that is profound beyond words, is prove to you that through Hurricane Helene, God was pointing to the movie Apocalypse Now in order to communicate that the apocalypse is beginning now through Eleanor Coppola. Francis Ford Coppola's wife, Eleanor Coppola, who made the documentary regarding the filming of Apocalypse Now, titled Hearts of Darkness, A Filmmaker's Apocalypse. So Jimmy Carter, for that matter, in God's signs, is also symbolism for the beginning of the apocalypse. The name Methuselah means when he dies, destruction, which is why the timing of the death of Jimmy Carter is so very important in God's big picture of signs. As is also, for example, the death of Paul Simon, who is predicted to die 4 days after Jimmy Carter's death in the 4th state, on the 4 times 4th anniversary of the election of the 44th president, and the 45th anniversary of the 444-day Iran hostage crisis. That's one of the other names for it, the 444-day hostage crisis, which was the last 444 days of Jimmy Carter's presidency. Simon is symbolism for the sound of silence, his song that launched his career, which hints at Revelation 8:1 and the period of silence that was heard in heaven before the 7 trumpet judgments of destruction began. And that's why Paul Simon's most recent album was released at the age of 81, 7 Psalms. Simon's death on the date 11/8 will hint at Revelation 8:1, and that's why his death will be 11 plus 8 days, as in Revelation 8:1, to the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, which will be the beginning of the destruction. In other words, Paul Simon's death will symbolize this brief period of calm, the calm before the storm, before Kamala Harris's predicted death. So that's the prophetic significance of the timing of these two, of the deaths of these two men in God's signs that are predicted. And that's also the significance of why God has brought into all of this the movie Apocalypse Now. And as I am going to explain, it is through, in this diagram, Eleanor Coppola that is pointed to with Hurricane Helene. Helene hints at Eleanor. That's the play on the two names there. Helene, Eleanor. All right? And Eleanor Coppola died 169 days, which is the 39th prime number before Hurricane Helene hit the 3 times 9th state 39 days before the 309th day of the year and the predicted death of the 39th president. Now, what is astounding also is that, and more confirmation for all of what I am saying, and by the way, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required, and this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And one thing that God is doing regarding Jimmy Carter is he is using him as a parallel to point to the prophecy in the book of Revelation, chapter 17, regarding the 5th through 8th kings. This 5th through 8th kings prophecy is also a series of 7 kings, and that's why Jimmy Carter was inaugurated in the year 77, which began this parallel of 7 presidents paralleling the 7 kings. Trump was also elected in a year ending in 7, and he is the 7th of these 7 chronological kings. And on his inauguration day, he was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old exactly, which is 3 sets of 7, and this was 73 days, as in 3 sets of 7, after he won the election by 77 electoral votes, which was exactly 73 weeks after he famously descended the golden escalator in his tower, which began his presidency campaign. And that was exactly 188 months after the 7.0 earthquake in Joshua Tree, California, because the Israelites, when they walked or marched around the walls of Jericho, led by Joshua, they enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7. The 188 months, because H188 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance is the word that means woe, exclamation mark, used in the context of extreme judgment from God. And before the walls of security collapsed of Jericho, when they were led by Joshua, they blew 7 trumpets, which is why Trump is associated, or his campaign and his election, presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security, which has since collapsed since he left office. Returning back to this 5th through 8th king's prophecy and its association with Jimmy Carter, that is why Hurricane Helene was the 8th named storm of the season and the 5th hurricane. That hints at the 5th through 8th king's prophecy. And this is amazing because this date here, September 26th, which I have explained to be part of this trail of signs, that's not in this diagram, by the way. What I'm referring to is the other videos. If you're watching this in a video where the explanation doesn't come prior to this, it's in the other videos. This date is exactly 580 months, which hints at the 5th through 8th king's prophecy, after production on the set of Apocalypse Now in the Philippines shut down stopped production because of a hurricane, Typhoon Olga. Typhoon Olga shut down the production of Apocalypse Now. And by the way, Apocalypse Now is known for its issues with its production. It's famous for this, or infamous. That's why Eleanor Coppola and her documentary won many awards when it was released in 1991. It's a dramatic story, this production of this movie. Okay, and so it is known for its production, and the big thing about the production that it's known for is how the biggest problem was Typhoon Olga, which destroyed a very expensive set, for example, and it caused the stoppage of the production on this date, May 26th, 1976, exactly 580 months before this hurricane that was the 8th named storm and the 5th hurricane of the season, which is complete Jimmy Carter symbolism. And as I mentioned, Jimmy Carter in God's Signs here is symbolism for Methuselah, the grandfather of Noah, as in Noah's flood, which is what hurricanes symbolize. All right, now this Hurricane Helene was exactly 80 days, which was, again, Hurricane Helene was the 8th named storm, and it hit the U.S. exactly 80 days after the 8th ever storm named Beryl hit the U.S. on the 8th of the month. The word beryl appears in the New Testament as the 8th stone out of 12 stones in the book of Revelation. That word for beryl in the Greek New Testament concordance, Strong's Concordance, is the 969th word. In other words, beryl is G969. 969 is the age at which Methuselah died. In fact, it was July 8th, that it was first realized that God was using Jimmy Carter as symbolism for Methuselah, which is why it makes it even more astounding to have this exact 80 days connection from the 8th ever storm named Beryl to the 8th storm of the season, Hurricane Helene, which again is part of this trail leading to the death of Jimmy Carter, who is symbolism for Methuselah. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention here is that the 5th through 8th king's prophecy is in Revelation 17:11, and the number 1711 is the 58th triangular number. In a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 58th row is 1711, which is at Revelation 17:11 regarding the 5th through 8th kings. Now, returning to the date, there's more to all of this, which confirms everything, and that's how it works. It's an interconnected web, God's true big picture of signs, filled with multiple confirmations in many different directions that confirms all of the analysis. And so this Typhoon Olga date, that, or rather when Apocalypse Now stopped because of Typhoon Olga, it connects with 239 days to the election of Jimmy Carter. Speaking of Jimmy Carter and him being relevant to all of this. This 239 days is relevant because, for one, God pairs certain numbers together, and if we think about it, one simple way in which he would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, and I know which numbers he pairs together because I've been studying his big picture of signs from morning until night for more than full-time hours for more than 6 years. And the two numbers frequently he uses to pair together are 9 and 23. Not only is 23 the 9th prime number, but the Antichrist was inaugurated in 09, and he is the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. And that's just scratching the surface. But also, 239 is the 52nd prime number. God uses the number 52 in his signs to symbolize 2 times 26, and the 226th word in Strong's Hebrew Concordance, which is the word that means prophetic sign. Okay, so that, in other words, means this is a confirmation also that this is relevant, and this connects, and therefore this connection is relevant. Now, ultimately, Jimmy Carter in this prophecy is identifying the Antichrist, the 8th king, which is another reason why this number that symbolizes Obama is relevant to the inauguration of Carter in 77, which, as I mentioned or explained, is the beginning of this 7 kings chronology that parallels, or 7 presidents that parallels the 7 kings prophecy. This 239 days is also broken down into this, because it is 4 times 40 days, which hints at the 44th president. And by the way, God pairs these 3 numbers together, 9, 23, and 44, because the 44th president was inaugurated in 09 and he wore 23. Okay, to the election of Jimmy Carter. And this is also 22 weeks and 6 days, which again hints at this word in the concordance that means prophetic sign. Okay. In turn, the election of Jimmy Carter is 11 weeks and 2 days from the date 11/2 to the inauguration of Jimmy Carter. And this is also 77 days, and Carter was inaugurated in 77 because it's very prophetic. And the 11/2 is also a hint at the 11 times 2 and 22, which is the number that symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist. And that is relevant to Jimmy Carter because, for example, this connection. Jimmy Carter was inaugurated exactly 666 days to Jonestown, the day of the mass murder-suicide, or I should say mass suicide-murder. When the people at Jonestown, if you don't know the story, they didn't only drink the Kool-Aid, they also took the pointy thing. In fact, the Kool-Aid was to speed things up. The plan was to take the pointy thing, the original plan. So masses of people took the pointy thing, and that's all symbolism for you-know-what, the pointy thing that you can't talk about. That's what that is, and that is the mark. And the thing is the mark of the Antichrist. In its current form, it does not need an additional technology to go with it, such as an additional form of a false religious or a false form of religious worship. For those that are wise, there was a false religious worship. And also, it does not require a different or another supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is, in fact, it is judgment for this particular doctrine. And for the commonly held objections that people have based on their understanding of Bible prophecy, which will be proven to be incorrect when this prediction comes to pass in this video, watch the answers to those commonly held objections to why this can't be the mark of the Antichrist in the must-watch snake bite video on this channel. But make no mistake, when the prediction comes to pass, it will prove everything that I've just said, and believe me, I know far better than you the reason and purpose for this prediction and why God has given me a voice through this prediction. It is to prove what I have just said. Case closed, end of debate, no more discussion. It is the mark of the Antichrist. Okay. And so, let's go here now. And by the way, the Jonestown Day was also the day of the release of Earth, Wind, and Fire's September song. And other videos explain how this song sings about September 21st was a step in the trail. And in fact, the step prior to September 26th in the step was, for Jimmy Carter anyway, September 21st. But that's explained in the other videos, or perhaps this video if you were watching that particular video. Okay, and so from Jonestown and the Earth, Wind, and Fire, which, by the way, is more Noah's flood symbolism, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I could elaborate, but I won't. Okay, and so that day is 4,567% of a year. And that number, 4,567, in the Greek concordance is the word Satan. And we get to that, this date for Jimmy Carter. As I explained a minute ago, this was the first way in which it was realized that God was pointing to Jimmy Carter, or rather Methuselah, as symbolism for Jimmy Carter, or vice versa. Okay. All right, so when we go down back here to Jimmy Carter's inauguration, we get this number of days, 271, which is the 58th prime number. So again, Jimmy Carter, and specifically his inauguration in 77, is a parallel with this prophecy of the 5th through 8th kings, and that's why it's astounding that we have this 58th prime number connection to this date. What's important about this date? Well, this was the day that the Yankees won the World Series against Los Angeles, which is, by the way, the reason why Los Angeles is playing the Yankees this year in the World Series, and this was predicted to happen before the playoffs began. But this was the day in which player number 44 hit his record 5th home run. He ended up winning the MVP of the World Series. He hit 5 home runs in the World Series, which was a record, and this hints at 45. The movie Apocalypse Now infamously cost $45 million to make. And in a minute, I'll talk about this 45 years connection here, which was big time known ahead of time to be an important date, and because of this 45 years connection. All right? But back here, we're talking about, of course, the Antichrist, the 44th president, who will preside over the 5th trumpet, described in Revelation chapter 9, which will be facilitated or triggered by 5G frequencies. But that is all explained in other videos. But also, the movie Argo, the movie that won, I think it was either Best Director or Best Picture. I think it was Best Director, Ben Affleck. Anyway, the movie Argo won the Academy Award, and maybe it was Best Screenplay. Well, anyway, the movie cost $44.5 million. You could round that up to 45, and it's not typical for Wikipedia to state beyond a decimal point the amount of money that a movie cost. It doesn't. It's usually rounded off. But in this case, it isn't, because it could go either way. Because, of course, this connects to Apocalypse Now that cost $45 million, and there's extremely prophetic significance to the number 45, but also 445, which is what 44 and 5 hint at, including the cost of Argo, which, by the way, is connected to Jimmy Carter, because that movie is about the 444-day Iran hostage crisis, which coincided with the last 444 days of Jimmy Carter's presidency. Of course, this ultimately hints at the 44th president, the Antichrist. Iran being symbolism for the Antichrist and the Antichrist kingdom. Okay, so back to Argo. So that's why the significance and relevance of the cost of Argo and why I bring it up. God has used the movie Argo and Ben Affleck and other signs which aren't explained right here. And that's how God's big picture of science works. It's an interconnected web that's infinite, and it's impossible really to explain it all in 1 hour. So anyway, that's what also is being hinted at with 44 and 5 is the number 445, which is the 136th semi-prime number, and 136 is the 4 times 4th triangular number. In a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 136th row is 445. All right? And 4 times 4 obviously hints at the 44th president. Okay, so anyway, who, by the way, is the Antichrist, and in Bible prophecy, his number, the Antichrist's number is 666, which is why we get this 666 days exactly from this final game of the World Series, which was Game 6, to the movie Apocalypse Now. Okay, the release of Apocalypse Now that cost $45 million to make, which in turn connected with exactly 45 years to this date. Now, this date was known since 2017 to be extremely important because of an alignment in the night sky with the planets Mars and Jupiter in between the 2 horns of Taurus. Taurus being symbolism for, or in ancient astronomy, being known to be the constellation that symbolizes the coming judge. Well, anyway, that's why it was astounding to learn in March of 2024 that God was pointing to this date, because it is also the 45th anniversary of the movie Apocalypse Now that cost $45 million to make. Now, on this day, which was, again, like I just mentioned, known to be related to Apocalypse Now since March, on August 15th, we had the prophetic sign that was astounding beyond words that confirmed what we were thinking. This was the day that Martin Sheen, the star of Apocalypse Now, shook hands with Joe Biden, the president. That was a news story because, of course, Martin Sheen plays the president in the television series West Wing. He's arguably more famous for his role as the president in West Wing than he is for his role in the movie Apocalypse Now. But what's also interesting is that in Apocalypse Now, the famous scene is when he unintentionally, as he was acting, cut his hand when he punched the mirror. He did not intend to cut his hand. He punched the mirror and then he famously went with it. He didn't stop filming. He just continued to act and then used the blood as a prop, and he spread it around his body and around the hotel room that he was in. And this became part of the movie. That's also in the documentary, how it was not scripted, and how Martin Sheen just went with it after he accidentally cut his hand pretty badly while he was being filmed. Okay, and that's why it's astounding that the story on this day is that he shook hands with the president. Furthermore, the mark of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy regards a person's hand and what they do with it. It's symbolism for their actions. The mark on the forehead and the right hand is symbolism for one's thoughts and deeds. Okay, it's not literal. Okay, which is one of the objections that people have. It's not literal. We can know this from the book of Deuteronomy as well, because in Deuteronomy, the forehead and hand is symbolism for one's actions and deeds. Okay, now the name of Martin Sheen's character in the West Wing is Bartlett. He's President Bartlett. Bartlett is a type of pear. It's the most commonly sold type of pear. And on this day, we had the sign regarding Matthew Perry, which God is using for another reason, which is the coming restriction of food to only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, which, by the way, corrupts a person's blood, which is why the bloody hand in Apocalypse Now shook hands with the president. Get that? Okay, so the mark of the Antichrist gives a person blood disease, and Martin Sheen cut his hand, and the hand is associated with the doing in Bible prophecy regarding the mark of the Antichrist. And he shook hands with the president, and the president, the future president, the 44th president, who will become the president again, will enforce the mark of the Antichrist. And then he will restrict the rationed food to only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, the good, supposed so-called good citizens. And that's why Perry, okay, who died just after playing pickleball, because it's a type of pear, and pickleball is hint at food as well. And okay, so anyway, that's why on this day we had the sign involving the things. The things that Matthew Perry took that caused his death was in the news on this day, which corrupted his blood, which is why Martin Sheen on this day. Okay? They were the 5 arrests of the people that were supplying him the ketamine things, the pointy things. Okay? And it was the ketamine queen, which hints at Jimmy Carter, who again is symbolism for this king's prophecy. All right. Now, on this same day, there was a hit and run right near the arrests of the suppliers of things for Matthew Perry, near where Matthew Perry died, of the hit and run of the guy named Perry Kurtz. Kurtz, since that Antichrist curse. Perry, because of Matthew Perry on this day. Now, this guy was in the 6th episode of the 8th season of America's Got Talent. That hits at 68. The number 68 is the equivalent in simple English gematria of the name Barack Obama. But also, it hints at the 6th and 8th kings, because Barack Obama is the 6th and 8th king in the parallel. Okay? All right. Now, what is amazing, though, is that Perry Kurtz started his career in comedy. He was a staple at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. His name is on the exterior wall of the location. Okay? And he started his career in his local town with a competition. His local city, I forget which city he's from. I think it might be St. Louis. But anyway, where he won the competition, won $250, began his career as a comedian, and that was for singing. Oh, maybe that's why I got it mixed with St. Louis, because he was impersonating Jerry Lewis and sang as Jerry Lewis the Beatles song Eleanor Rigby. You know the famous song Eleanor Rigby. Okay, you know that song, right? And the song also goes, look at all the lonely people, which is quite appropriate for this apocalypse now symbolism. That is amazing confirmation that Hurricane Helene right here is also a hint at Eleanor Coppola. In other words, this was the 45th anniversary of the release of the $45 million Apocalypse Now, filmed by Coppola, and his wife is named Eleanor, who made the documentary about the movie, and that's why this is an Eleanor Coppola sign, how Perry Kurtz sang Eleanor Rigby. And this isn't an obscure thing. All of the articles that talked about the hit-and-run death of Perry Kurtz mentioned how he got his start by singing Eleanor Rigby. At least, the majority of the articles mentioned that. Okay. Well, also what's very important, as I'll explain here, Jimmy Fallon announced on this date his haunted mansion, I forget what he's calling it, in New York City. Okay? He's started a haunted mansion in New York City. That's why it's 42 days. That's why this 42 days is relevant to this date. Because on this date, on September 26th, was also the raid of New York City's mayor's mansion. Okay, the mansion of the mayor of New York City was raided by government agents on this day. And as I explained in other videos, the Paul Simon videos, this hints at the Addams family mansion. The fictional The Addams Family is about their lives inside their mansion. Okay, and Adams, the name Adams is equal to 42 in simple English gematria. And in Bible prophecy, a period of 42 months is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. Hence what this 42 days between these haunted mansion signs hints at. There were other mansion signs on this day, including the tour of Jimmy Fallon and the haunted mansion tour that Jimmy Fallon and Prince Harry took in the haunted mansion that he had announced back on this date, 42 days earlier. Okay, so they aired a segment in which they were followed inside the haunted mansion, Jimmy Fallon, I should say, and Prince Harry. Now, Prince Harry is relevant because he, in a prophetic sign, toured the Graceland Mansion. Prince Harry, the king of rock, right? You get the pun there. The media got the pun back in 2014 when they did it. And that is why the name of the New York City's mayor, the New York City mayor's mansion is named Gracie Mansion. It hints at the Graceland Mansion. And also on this day, to further confirm all of this, was the exclusive interview by People.com published of Elvis Presley's granddaughter, who is now the owner of Graceland Mansion, about her completion of her mother's memoir about her mother's life and the Graceland Mansion. And furthermore, in the movies she stars in, Elvis Presley's granddaughter, they have mansion symbolism, as I explained in the other videos. So haunted mansion even. So it's just amazing beyond words what God does, right? Okay. And also the last book that Elvis was reading on the day that he died, when he died, like exactly when he died, in the bathroom when he died, he was reading a book by Frank Adams. The book, by the way, was Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus. Okay. And that's why God had this connection to the name Adams in the Graceland Mansion, because it ultimately here points to Jesus, as I have now finished coming full circle and explaining. All right. Oh, okay, and speaking of full circle, again, this storm, Hurricane Helene, hit the 3 times 9th state 39 days before the 309th day of the year and the predicted death of the 39th president, Jimmy Carter. Okay. There's a couple more things. This the shutdown of Apocalypse Now was 1,176 days prior to the release of Apocalypse Now, and 1,176 is the 48th triangular number because the Antichrist will become the 48th president after it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. All right. Now, and that'll be, as I mentioned, 11 plus 8 days after the death of Paul Simon on the date 11/8. This is also 23 days in the Antichrist wore jersey number 23. Okay, so, but also this 1,176 days is 3 months, 3 years, 2 months and 20 days, which hints at 322, or Genesis 3:22. And that's why Jimmy Carter became the longest living president in U.S. history on the date 322, March 22nd in 2019. And that is because the first lie ever told at the beginning of the age by the serpent to Eve in the garden was she that surely will not die, which is symbolized in Genesis 3:22, which it will be the lie at the end of the age with the coming demons pretending to be aliens and the promise of immortality without God, just like the serpent promised in the garden. All right, so, okay, so that gets us all of this now. Okay, and again, the $45 million Apocalypse Now and the 45-year connection is also relevant to Jimmy Carter because his death, and God was pointing to this through this, exactly 45 years after the 444-day hostage crisis, which coincided with his final 444 days of his presidency. Now, the reciprocal of 45 is 0.022, which hints at the second coming and the second presidency of Barack Obama, and also 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. The inverse of the mark of the Antichrist in the book of Ezekiel would have been the Tav letter, and the Tav is the 22nd and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the last book of the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, the 22nd out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Now, the grand finale here, it's not really, I got a couple more things, but this is amazing because on this day, the New York Yankees in New York, we had, again, the signs in New York, including the Haunted Mansion tour, but also the raid of Adams' mansion, Mayor Eric Adams. The Yankees played in New York City, and they played the Baltimore Orioles, which is a type of bird, and Kamala Harris is predicted to die from a bird strike and then crash into the baseball stadium. And the Baltimore Orioles, which is who the Yankees were playing, used to play in St. Louis, and her crash will be in St. Louis. Now, the score was 7-9, and that's why this date is exactly 7 times 9 days to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. But what's all relevant here, too, regarding all of this and Jimmy Carter is that 7 times 9 hints at 79, the year of the 444-day hostage crisis and the release of the movie Apocalypse Now, which, by the way, is 11 weeks and 4 days before the 45th anniversary is 11 weeks and 4 days before the date 11/4, which again hints at 11 times 4 equals 44 because it is 4 times 4 years after the election of the 44th president, and Jimmy Carter will die in the 4th state 4 days before the predicted death of Paul Simon. Okay. One last thing here too, though, is speaking of Paul Simon and the movie Apocalypse Now, one of the other stars of the movie, Dennis Hopper, was on Saturday Night Live with Paul Simon, and they did a commercial to promote that Saturday Night Live on this date. Okay, this commercial was released on this date. What makes confirmation of the prophetic significance of the date of the commercial is that in the commercial, Paul Simon lifts up a newspaper, a New York Times newspaper, and says, "Look, this is the date," to prove that this is the date. Okay, and the show was 2 days later. But Paul Simon, in other words, was standing next to Dennis Hopper in a commercial Dennis Hopper here, of course, is symbolism for Apocalypse Now. And that's why this commercial was exactly 405 months before the 45th anniversary of the movie Apocalypse Now. And the sign involving Martin Sheen, the other star from Apocalypse Now. 405 months exactly. Now, the number 45 is the 9th triangular number. And also the number 9 is the most important number in God's signs. That's from the Bible. It symbolizes God's judgment. It's exactly 9 months from the commercial with Dennis Hopper from Apocalypse Now and Paul Simon to Paul Simon's prophetic concert in Central Park, the huge concert, and which attracted 500,000 people, and Paul Simon's name in Hebrew gematria equals 500, but that's another story. But that in turn is 2 times 52 days, which hints at 2,520 days, the number in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the period of the end and the Antichrist, the end times. 2, this date, the release of Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse. The documentary that won awards, I think an Academy Award. That's amazing, coming full circle because of Hurricane Helene. I'm explaining again the theme of this video is September 26th, how it was a step in the trail, and how Hurricane Helene was in fact pointing to Eleanor Coppola, which points to Apocalypse Now because of her documentary. This release of the documentary is in turn exactly 9 times 44 months to the date it is predicted that the apocalypse will now begin, with the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. It's exactly 9 times 44 months. The 44th president was inaugurated in 09. I already explained how God pairs 9 and 44 together. This is a prime example. Also, God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. I've explained or touched upon this theme of mansions in God's sign, and ultimately this points to the White House mansion in which the Antichrist will occupy. The White House has 44 plus 44 plus 44 rooms in it because ultimately it's set up for the Antichrist to dwell in, the 44th president. And 9 times 44 months is also 44 plus 44 plus 44 plus 40 plus 44 plus 44 plus 44 plus 44 plus 44 months, okay? In other words, 44 plus 44 plus 44 times 3 months. Okay. Also, it is exactly 11 times 3 years. And that hints at a couple of things. One is the 113th word in Strong's Greek Concordance, which is the word that means lawless, unprincipled men, the Antichrist. Also, it's also a hint at Joe Biden. God is using pairs of 11 and 3 to hint at Joe Biden because Joseph was the 11th son of the 3rd patriarch. That's just a thing that God is doing in his signs. And also, G131 is another reason why God pairs 11 and 3, because G131 is the word that means blood disease, which is what a person gets when they take the mark of the Antichrist. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.